Hello, everyone. Welcome to our recap of our double elimination episode here on Survivor Calgary. We had the demerge twist tonight, taking out two pretty strong players right off the bat. Interesting to see how this shook down. And I'm joined once again by my lovely co-host Kendal. Kendal, what did you think of the episode?
Hey, this was a really spicy one. This one was really fun. There's lots of twists and turns, some very interesting gameplay, and I think that this demerge twist really shook things up, which is awesome.
We see Connell eliminated, who was kind of that auxiliary member of the Brawn that they cared about, but they were willing to cut him if it meant pulling the belligerents in closer.
Yeah.
But then we see one of those members of belligerents get cut here. We see Kayla go home with a newly found idol in her pocket. Some pretty tragic stuff there. We will have Kayla join us later on in the recap this week. Connell, unfortunately, is not able to make it as he's currently hiking the West Coast Trail. Otherwise, I think he would love to join us, but he doesn't have service. So
it's really rude of him, honestly, to not prioritize his schedule around this. Yeah,
I know, and you've been rooting for him to be gone the whole season.
I'm not gonna lie. When he was eliminated, when he was eliminated, I was like, "Fuck, I'm gonna have to face him now. We're gonna have to talk about it." Yeah.
No, unfortunately not. I mean, in fairness, I don't think he watched season 2, so maybe he hasn't been watching your eternal hatred of him over here on the podcast. But we'll see. Maybe one day you'll get to see him again. Let's talk a little bit about these conversations that happened before that demerge split. We see kind of Taylor and Kristen jockeying for position here a little bit. Before we go, we see kind of this pairing of Connell, Bomey, and Taylor discussed. We see Eric's many alliances outlined. Talk to me about what kind of you found interesting about this first little chunk of the episode before we were able to hop into the demerge, the swap.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we know from last episode that Kristen is generally in a better position or a more intentional position than she seems to be, right? Like, even if she is, as she's saying, like playing from the bottom, like that's a strategy. It's a choice that she's making. It's not necessarily that she's actually floundering maybe as much as she is. So it was interesting to see, I think, especially given the conversation that we had with her last week, so a little bit more of like how that's actually playing out and how she's having those conversations and like making those relationships happen where she's really not putting herself in a position, I think, of being like viewed as a big target, but still establishing good interesting relationships with people, right?
We kind of see that tactic that she kind of talked about a little bit last week, where she's playing up kind of her emotional response in order to gain some sympathy from other players. We see that working on Eric. Eric fully described it here. Like, I really feel for Kristen as a person. I want to keep her around for as long as possible. So clearly she's doing something right. She's able to bring in Craig here to vote out Connell, though Craig obviously wanted Connell out long before that as well. Let's move into that challenge and talk a little bit about the rankings. Did any of the rankings surprise you? Did you want kind of a refresher on exactly how they lined up?
I've got it in front of me. I think because the top 5, we have Sydney, Shervin, Chelsea, Kayla, and Eric. I think that I'm surprised that Kayla is viewed as highly as she is. I think because
I really think it's almost entirely to do with that first immunity challenge that was so visible for the Edge, because the Edge is the one making this ranking. They were the one who saw her hold up that bucket for as long as she did. They were the ones who saw all of that and don't get to really see the gameplay where she's being a little bit more passive, smoking a lot of weed, kind of chilling and letting the game kind of take her to where it's taking her.
Yeah, for sure. That's super fair. And she is, I think, a really strong player, and we've seen her like pull that out when she needs to, right? So I think that one was a little bit interesting there. I'm not surprised that Sydney was ranked first. I do think that continues to, like, that just sort of cements it's like nail in the coffin for her as being perceived as a really big threat in the long run.
Manages to avoid another elimination here, though, after being labeled as this big threat, which is impressive.
It's super impressive. Yeah.
One thing that kind of stuck out to me as kind of a surprise is like, oh, this is kind of surprising that this person is so low, was Eric, who was in that top half, but was ranked right at the bottom of the Braun tribe with Connell.
Yeah, like just above Connell, right? And I think that the Edge is probably able, I assume that the Edge is able to pick up on some of the dynamics with Connell and the way, like the social game there. And so the fact that, Eric is just a notch above is pretty wild.
It's impressive, too. For him to be able to downplay his threat level and still be able to kind of maintain this position in the middle is really impressive with how much of an influence he and Chelsea and Shervin to some extent seem to be having on pushing the vote where it's going.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I mean, even Craig too, right? Like, I don't know, Craig's in a bit of a, like, Braun has been able to pull this alliance through so strongly and for so long, right? And Craig doesn't have that same, like, institutional, it's not the right word, but you know what I mean? Like,
he's not fully a Braun tribe member.
Yes, but he is also, like, he does have really good relationships across the board. I mean, I don't know. He seems like, but he hasn't been doing super hot in the challenges, right? Like, I guess we haven't seen as much of that from him. So who knows? But yeah, it was Eric being as low as he was interesting.
Definitely. Well, I mean, you mentioned Craig not doing as well in the challenges. Craig was second in that first immunity challenge.
In the very first one.
In the very first one, it was him and Kayla at the end together.
Oh, yeah, right.
Immunity.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah. But yeah, seemingly, so he's not, on first look, he's not the person you perceive to be the brawniest, brainiest, the person who's going to be as good at these challenges. But he's held his own so far, which is impressive to see.
Totally.
Speaking of challenges, we see the two challenges play out here. We see an extremely physical challenge between Eric and Shervin, that Shervin takes. And we see a very kind of nimble and agile final matchup between Bomi and Taylor, where we see Bomi's spin moves come out in full
power. So good. It was so good. The slow-mo edit was, like, excellent. Although my only comment is I would have loved immediately after that an even slower full replay of the whole thing. I was
we'll keep that in mind for next time. For sure.
Yeah, that was really impressive. That was super fun. Yeah,
he did wonderfully in that challenge. We did also see in that challenge that quick pairing of the three of them, Connell, Taylor, and Bomi kind of linking hands and being like, yeah, we're not going to vote for each other. We saw Tom bring that up at Tribal Council as well. Clearly not the case here. Let's move into kind of talking about this week, Tribe.
Yeah.
Kind of talk me through about how you saw the dynamics going into this swap segment with these five.
Yeah, this was really interesting. I mean, I think because Craig and Kristen were a pretty natural pairing from the jump, right? But
I don't know if anyone in game sees that.
No, that's fair. That's super fair. But at the same time, you know, they were the two. Obviously, they had lost the challenge right off the jump. But, like, we knew also, but we knew also that Bomi, Taylor, and Connell were close going into this, right? And so they are kind of the two on the outs. And so, I'm not sure how much that was seen as Craig and Kristen were going to kind of naturally pair together. But I think that made a lot of sense. I think Taylor's playing a really interesting game, and I think we can see a lot more of that. We could see a lot more of that playing out in some of these conversations.
He's so committed to this under the radar thing, where he just, and I mean, it's working. He's number 10 so far. He's so committed to just sinking as low as he can get so that no one notices him, and he can just kind of keep slinking his way forward and forward in the game. And it's working great so far for him. He's never really been targeted as a name, even though he's been on the bottom. Some pretty impressive stuff there from him.
Yeah, super impressive. And then I think
technically not voting right at this vote. He votes for Craig here instead.
I was gonna say, who was the one Craig vote that went that way?
That was Taylor. That's why I think we saw him kind of agonizing a little bit. One thing that we didn't catch on film that I do kind of want to talk about at this Tribal Council is as they went to read the votes, we usually turn off the cameras because it's not like really important for us to capture that. Bomi asked Tom, hey, if I find an idol, can I play it for someone else? Tom says yes. And Bomi looks at Connell and nods. And so this really freaked Taylor out because he was like, oh, Bomey's going to play an idol right now for Connell to save him. I'm going to vote for Craig to try and see if I can do something here to influence the vote. And so that my closest ally in the game, Kristen, doesn't go home.
The mind games that Bomey is playing are just like...
He's going to fake everyone out at every turn, including me, by like writing his own name and then crossing out.
Yeah, like just unbelievable. And like, because even his conversation with Kristen, where he was like, you know, what would really be wild is if we blindsided Connell, like as if that had just occurred to him, which it obviously had not, right? But like,
I think it had. I think this is all.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, no, him presenting it to Kristen like, oh yeah,
I don't know.
I'm just thinking about this now, but wouldn't it be crazy if?
Yeah. Just really, really unbelievable because he's got to know that Kristen's not going to bring that up to him, right? But like,
she thinks that he's tight with Connell, and
yeah.
What do you think about this move from Bomey, taking out someone who presumably was pretty close to him, and kind of maybe breaking apart from this Braun group a little bit and making his own lane?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because he's in such a sticky spot, right? Like, because he hasn't had the same amount of time to establish relationships with other folks as all of the other players, right? Because he hasn't been playing, and it makes it. This is like obviously an entirely different reality show, but it makes me think of like in Drag Race when they bring back an eliminated queen, and like it's basically always that the person who returns goes home immediately. Like they're the next person to go home. And I mean, he's been
usually in Survivor when someone comes back as well.
Right. So he's been doing pretty good. Like he's made it through what? Is it 2 or 3?
3 tribal councils now he's made it through, but none with immunity. Although he does have his little acorn tactical camping suit fake idol that he's got.
Right. Yeah. Lots of mind games all around with him. But yeah, like I think he's doing pretty well. I mean, I think he's in a sticky spot because he doesn't have like the shield that Braun's do.
Yeah, and he doesn't have that time in the game that a lot of these other players have too, where Kristen and Taylor have been through so much together. The Braun tribe, they've been through so much together. They've just naturally been able to spend a lot more time together and get to know each other. And we saw that this episode hopping over to the Strong tribe, where Eric, I think, is talking to Sydney. And he's like, yeah, I just know how you think and how you're approaching things. I don't really have that same sense from Kayla.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think for Bomey in some ways that it could go either way, where people are worried about how he's going to vote. And so they are anxious about getting someone out that they can't wrangle. Or though it could really work in his favor, which it seems to be so far, where people are like, well, he's going to vote whoever he's on the revenge path for.
I think the word that was used the most in the game to describe any single player was Bomey is a wild card.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, it's super fair. But I think for him, like, I think that he's also seems to be a player who's thinking about the long game, thinking about jury. And I think if he makes it far enough, he could claim, depending on how it goes, depending on who he's needing to convince, he could claim this as a move that he had a responsibility for, right?
I think we saw Craig talk a little bit about how he wanted to puppet master getting Connell out here.
Yeah.
But really, if Bomey isn't willing to flip, which he did totally on his own, Connell doesn't go home here. It's Kristen for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think it was a little bit of a risky move in some ways, but also not really, because it was a safer vote for him. It was a lot safer in this context of just 5 of them than it would have been in a bigger, or he maybe wouldn't have been able to take as much credit for it in a bigger group where it seemed like maybe the natural next step that Connell was going to go.
Real quick before we move on to the Strong tribe, I am curious to hear your thoughts about this this Taylor vote as well, because obviously this is a great move to kick out Connell. For Craig and Kristen, they've been pushing for it for a really long time. What do you think about this move for Taylor? Connell seemingly seems to think he's pretty close to Taylor at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little worried about Taylor. I think I don't know how this will play for him, but having voted for Craig, I think it probably would have been wiser for him to have been on side with the rest of the for him to be for him to be in the like in step with Bomi and Kristen, because Kristen's a pretty natural ally for him, right? Like they've been playing together at least a little bit, at least keeping each other in the loop from the jump. And so maybe I don't know if this will change how he is perceived by those two. Yeah, I'm not really sure. And it sounds like from what Connell said that most of the Browns don't really trust Taylor don't trust Taylor anyways. So like whether him voting for Connell and the Browns don't like Connell, so voting for Connell would probably put Taylor in a good spot. Do you know what I mean? Like that just seems like the most logical thing. I could see how he could get freaked out at Tribal though.
Certainly, especially with that little bit of a fake out. The other thing I know I said one more thing. The other thing I do want to talk about before we move on from that bottom tribe. Did you see during Connell's final words, we cut a little bit to a little clip of Craig finding something in the box that holds all the torches?
I don't think I noticed that. I don't think I did.
Craig grabbed a little blue bundle that we've spotlighted a few times on previous episodes.
Yeah.
That may or may not be the fireball idol. We'll have to check in with that in a future episode. But let's now move on to talking about this strong tribe. And kind of the interesting dynamics here where right away we see the 4 core brawn that are kind of running things and Kayla.
Yeah. And it's kind of hilarious and feels like just really quintessentially Kayla in the best way, that she doesn't really click. It doesn't really click for her
until Tom brings it up at Tribal Council.
Yeah, for sure. It just feels really like it's kind of a charming Kayla-ism. It seems like to kind of just be, vibing, doing what she thinks she's doing. And in her defense, I think that the focus on Sydney is really logical, right?
Absolutely.
And it seems like
I think we fully saw that focus on Sydney from Shervin as well. I think had Eric and Chelsea been down for it, Shervin 100% puts his vote here on Sydney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so I think that it made sense that Kayla felt safe. I'm sad that she felt as safe as she did and didn't bring her idol to Tribal.
Not even bring her idol to Tribal Council. Now, I want to be clear, because I was production for all of this. I was watching it. I was interacting with the players as they came up to the booth, all of that sort of stuff. Kayla, once she got to the booth, was like, damn, I didn't bring my idol. That's too bad. At no point did she ask me, hey, can I run back and grab my idol? Because I would have said yes.
No.
I would have been like, yeah, go ahead, go and run and grab it. And we'll see in future episodes, like other players run out of Tribal to grab other things that they need. So definitely unfortunate here for her.
Yeah.
Definitely unfortunate. Super. You never like going home with an idol in your pocket, especially when the idol isn't even in your pocket. It's back at camp hiding somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was a sad moment for sure. And you would
have been crazy also for Sydney to get idled out after the crazy tribals that she was at the swap.
Absolutely. It really would have been like a full circle
kind
moment.
Of poetic. Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if we need to talk too much more about these dynamics without our boot here, Kayla. Let's add her to the stream. Kayla, how are you doing? How's it going?
Hello. I'm good. Let me tell you, that exit interview of oh damn, I fucked up. That feeling sticks. Rewatching the episode and seeing that happen, being like, I did fuck up. I should have brought it with me.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, I could see again, I feel like I could see why you thought that you were in a pretty safe spot.
I was so comfortable, like you said, I was vibing. I was like, we have moved past the point of sticking to original tribes. Now we're thinking end game with alliances.
Tribes. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I was like, we're done with originals. We're moving forward with it. No, I was definitely not thinking in that kind of lane strategic-wise. However, I do want to solve a wee little debate you guys had going on. The Bomi kind of pitching Connell. I'd like to think that I had something to do with that, because he and I, unfortunately, I think it fell under lost footage. We did have a really good little conversation about hey, we're not friends at all. We don't have an alliance going. But you do something for me, I'll do something for you. You vote this way, I will vote any brain you want. You name it. You gotta vote for me, but you do this thing for me first. So we did have that conversation.
Interestingly enough, a glance into a future episode, we actually saw that from Sydney as well, where Sydney told Bomi, hey, I want to get out Connell. Can you help me out with this? And maybe this is why Bomi flips. He's like, oh, my two closest friends, Kayla and Sydney, want me to do this for them. I will do it for them.
Maybe. I would like to think that maybe I had something involved with that.
Certainly.
Yeah.
That sounds like we saw you guys connecting early on in that merge as well. That certainly makes sense. Who did you feel closest to out in the forest? Because I know we've kind of been pairing you with Craig for a lot of these discussions, and I think the players have as well. But I know that there was you showed some hesitancy towards Craig in a conversation with Katie in the previous week, where you're like, yeah, I think we're kind of making our own alliances, and I'm not always privy to his. Who did you feel closest to out there?
That's tough because I didn't really, during that time frame, like Craig and I were a really good alliance, but like I said, I didn't necessarily, like I did feel like he had other alliances going on. I didn't have a cemented alliance really. I felt like Shervin and I got really close, especially like at the end, like when the whole deliberation with Braun had been going on, like it had, had been brought up for the past couple episodes that myself, Eric, Shervin, Craig, like we were going to had a final four together. And like, especially because the four of us had talked, it's like, no, like we're thinking end game. We're not thinking team based anymore, which is why I kind of went into that council being so comfortable.
Being you, Shervin, and Eric together, like, this is easy. We'll just get out.
Yeah.
We'll be smooth sailing from here.
Yeah, I'm like, brilliant. Like, this is a beautiful way to like kind of pick an apple off the tree kind of thing. And I will said apple.
We saw Sydney also bring up this idea that she pitched to you about like a girl gang, about you, her, and Chelsea working together to maybe get one of these, to get Shervin or Eric out. Was that ever something that you bought any stock into, or were you just like, yeah, this is just a fake plan that they're telling me, but I want to get out Sydney?
Yeah, not necessarily. I was like, that seems like a nice way to kind of make me feel comfortable in the moment, I guess, but it wasn't something that seemed like it seemed like more so a pitch to be like, hey, don't worry, you'll be fine. Like, let me give you something to be comfortable about. And it was like, no, that doesn't really seem cemented. I got this alliance going over here, but like, sure, kind of thing.
Totally.
Yeah, that's super fair.
Kayla, correct me if I'm wrong. Was this the only tribal council that you did not have a joint at?
This was, yeah, actually.
I think that has
now that you mention that.
I was gonna say that feels like a bad sign already. It's a bad start. Yeah.
Ooh. You know what? Like, now that you mention it, it's like, I wasn't smoking one. Maybe that probably would have helped with something.
Then you would have been paranoid enough to play your idol, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah. Like, you know what? That whole thing about like stoners not being coherent when they're smoking weed. Joke's on them. I'm not coherent if I'm sober.
Kendal, do you have any other questions for Kayla here?
Kayla, I'm curious who you were most excited to see on the edge when you got voted out.
Oh, I was super excited to see Justine.
Yeah.
Just because, like,
because you were immediately off the bat. I didn't even think of that. Yeah, you had a Justine demerge too. Where like
her and I voted together. Like, we had a plan right off the bat, and it didn't work out. And I'm like, no, we could have had something so good. I think I was just really stoked to just see the rest of the Bellinis. Honestly, because Haley and Conrad were there too. I was like, you know what? At least I get to see some familiar faces.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I guess there's just one belligerent left in the game at this stage, right? Just Craig.
Just Craig left, and the only two brains left. Is that correct? No, there's three. Brains.
3.
Yeah, 3 with Bomi.
Yeah.
Wild. Yeah.
I was thinking of Bomi as his own tribe
in his own world. Yeah.
The edge attorney.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Kayla, do you have anything you want to say to us before Kendall and I get to a very important discussion?
No, I think that is it. I think we covered it all. It was, as I said, an unfortunate turn of events, but that's how the game goes.
I actually have one more question. Just
Yeah,
interested.
go for it.
On your guys' side of the vote, did you have any speculation on who was going to go home from the other swap, and who were you hoping to see go home on the other swap, other than Connell, obviously?
Connor was my main one. I was like, please get him out. It was just, he was a cocky man, just a gun-ho individual, and I was like, the satisfaction of seeing him knocked down was kind of nice.
Yeah, you got at least you technically beat Connell here. He got voted out before you did, so you can take that as a little bit of a win.
Yeah, I will keep that in my docket.
Absolutely. Thanks a ton for joining us, Kayla. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Take care, guys.
All right, Kendall. I'm actually going to add a little bit to this segment.
Yeah.
Because as of 2 weeks ago, we had an announcement made where Survivor Calgary would be running its 4th season as All-Stars. I'm going to ask you a question about both of these players eliminated. Do you want to see them come back next season?
I would love to see Kayla back.
That's fair.
I would love to see Kayla back. I think that I would be really curious to see how her gameplay might be different if she if she came back, or how she might be consistent with it. And Connell is really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, Connell's a lot of fun.
Any other players who have been eliminated so far who you'd like to see come back?
Of course, I'd love to see Justine. I think obviously it would be awesome to see Malone play because he played so well and was just like a real star. I would be concerned that he would have like a giant target on his back.
He didn't make merge. There'll be bigger targets.
That's fair. That's super fair. Like, some people here maybe who
knows?
Who run the game sometimes. I don't know, maybe just as an idea. And who else has been eliminated?
Conrad,
Willow.
Haley,
Willow, I'd love to see back because I thought Willow was also really awesome, and her time was cut too short. Yeah.
Well, let's get into the main meat then.
Yeah.
Who is your player of the week this week? This is a little bit of an interesting week because we have two kind of tribes separate. I'm not going to give you the out of giving 2 players of the week. You still have to pick one, but I will give 2 from each tribe as your short list.
Okay.
So on one tribe, I have Bomi as an interesting kind of player of the week candidate for really kind of showing some agency in the game and not just proving that he's just going to vote out brains no matter what. He's really kind of showing that that's just a show so that he can advance the game in the way he wants to and takes out a really big threat here in Connell. I think you can talk about Craig. Craig, right off the bat, was like, hey, I want to go with Connell. Connell goes here. Good move for him. On the other side, I think you can talk about Sydney, who first place on the ranking and somehow manages to avoid the target here, manages to avoid the vote, albeit with some luck, where Kayla doesn't play her idol. And lastly, I think you want to bring up Chelsea, who seemingly seems to be kind of pushing this vote away from the Eric, Shervin, and Kayla alliance more towards that core of her and Eric and Sid and Shervin. So those would be my 4.
It's so hard.
Do you want me to give you a 1-2? For me, at least?
Yes, I would. I would like for you.
My 1 and 2, I think for me at least, I would have Bomi, and I would have, I think, Chelsea. But it's hard to kind of, I think her and Sydney are close.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, it's going to be Bomi this week. And that has nothing to do with his hand in getting Connell out, which I have been asking for a couple of weeks. I have no personal stake.
Motion spin.
It was so impressive, and I want to see the slow-mo spin on repeat forever.
Well, maybe
And
we can post that to the Instagram or something this week.
yes, I think that would be awesome. And again, I want the second one like really slow, just the last zoomed in spoon falling out of Taylor's hand. Yeah. I think that him making it as far as he has already post returning to the game is super impressive. And I think that him yeah, I don't know, like being so much of a wild card and still like that just has really worked to his advantage. He's clearly thinking ahead. I think there's a lot going on in his gameplay that is really interesting and cool. And this is his first like kind of big move. And that's really exciting and cool. And I think, Chelsea like laying low, but still being like, having such a good, like just doing so well is really, really super impressive. And I'm curious to see where that goes. Yeah, but I think Bomy's it for me this week.
I think it's a great choice. I think I probably would have landed on the same spot. I think it's really interesting to see him kind of break away from that, I'm on a revenge trail, and start making some interesting moves here. And it'll be interesting to see how that sets him up as we move a little bit further into the game.
For sure.
Kendall, do you want to say anything before we drop off here?
I was just gonna say that I hope that Sydney is able to take some of the heat off of herself in the next.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see whether now that she's number one, if some of these people who are ranked in the bottom will start to target her too and kind of come together. Now that they've really kind of all voted together, we could see maybe this 4 coalesce into something. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How about you? Anything else, Cole?
One thing I want to add that has nothing to do with Survivor Calgary, but as probably many people are aware, most of our audience is from Alberta. We do have a provincial election coming up. May 29th, I believe, is the exact date for the election. But importantly, we do have early voting opening up starting tomorrow. And I would encourage everyone to get out and vote for who you think would be the best party and the best leader to lead Alberta moving forward.
Go vote. Yay for voting. Voting is cool.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kendall, for joining me. Thanks everyone for tuning in to watch. We'll be back next week to discuss episode 10 of Survivor Calgary Brains, Bronze, Belligerents. And I'm very excited already to get back talking to you about that one, Kendall.
Yeah, you too. See you, Cole.
See you, everyone. Bye.